Much has been said about the Swedish word lagom, and it's been claimed that it's a unique Swedish word for a unique Swedish concept. The Swedish linguist Mikael Parkvall asked around among his friends and found out that words with similar meaning exist in both the Estonian and the Finnish languages. Nonetheless, the word is considered tricky to translate into many other languages. Even though my German is a bit rusty, I can think of at least 4 German words that could be used as translations for lagom, depending on the context. In Welsh, the word digon, which roughly means enough, could be used as a translation in many situations. But to cover all uses of lagom, many different words would be needed. A simple example of the complex use of lagom is this dialogue. Har du lagom med fritid? Nej, jag har för mycket. Or, nej, jag har för lite. This example clearly shows that enough doesn't cover lagom perfectly, since do you have enough spare time wouldn't give the other part any chance of answering no, I have too little spare time, but only no, I don't have enough. Göran Everdahl explained that lagom is used to avoid extremes and to express stop, and that's too extreme. The Swedish aristocracy used it to fake wealth despite being poor, indicating that they were a bit richer than Swedes in general, but not as rich as the richest in Europe. Using legs, I tried to find the answers to these questions. How is the Swedish word lagom translated into English? What English words or phrases are translated into lagom in Swedish translations? Is lagom used as frequently in translations as in original Swedish texts? Question 1. How is the Swedish word lagom translated into English? There were 41 occurrences of lagom in the Swedish to English part of legs. These 41 occurrences were translated as follows. No translation, 14.6%. Enough, 12.2%. Moderation, in moderation, 7.3%. Well and just enough, 4.9%. About, somewhat, reasonable, quite, balanced, will do, don't go overboard, steady, appropriately, suitably, adequate, just right, in time, a perfect time. All of these were used once. And in 6 occurrences, the whole section was completely skipped. I wasn't able to figure out whether the whole section completely skipped entries were due to corpus structure, untranslated texts, or simply completely restructured translations. Since 2 occurrences were from an Einhorn book, and those 2 were the only entries from that book, and another was from a book by Westerlund, and again that entry was the only one from that book. 3 out of 5 entries from a book by Svan were also completely skipped, but the other 2 were translated as a perfect time and in time. A closer look at neighboring entries in legs would be needed to find out why those sections were missing. The 3 moderation entries all came from the same text, and the translator hadn't used any variations when translating lagom, so they could be seen as a single unit coming from a single translator. Handling them that way gives us 2 general ways of translating lagom into English. Either the word is simply skipped, as in lite lagom varmt turns into warm area, or translated as enough or just enough. Lagom tung, translated into heavy enough. Lagom med vatten, translated into just enough water. The phrase kan vara lagom was translated both as should be enough and should work well. Other translations: time, lagom till påsk, translated as in time for Easter. A verb, är lagom, translated as will do. Liksom att städa lagom, translated as don't go overboard when tidying up. As an adverb, lagom stora bitar, translated as appropriately sized pieces. As an approximation, lagom syrlig smak, translated as somewhat tangy taste. Question 2. What English words or phrases are translated into lagom in Swedish translations? The English to Swedish part of legs only contained 3 instances. In time for Christmas was translated as lagom till jul. Bite-size snack was translated as lagom mellanmål. And roughly 185 degrees Fahrenheit is fine was translated as ungefär 85 grader varmt är lagom temperatur. In time is the only expression found in both directions. Question 3. Is lagom used as frequently in translations as in original Swedish texts? With only 3 translated instances versus the 41 entries in original Swedish texts, it's very clear that lagom is used more frequently in original Swedish texts than in translations, probably because the translators try to keep the implications of the original text when translating. This also indicates that lagom is indeed a Swedish way of expressing things, even though it's not unique for the Swedish language. As a side note, it could be mentioned that the introduction to Göran Everdahl's book, Boken om lagom, contains 24 uses of lagom, all of which are translated as lagom in the English translation of the book. Thank you for listening.